Let's take a moment today to thank the boldness of our government and our shareholders.
William Hamilton built his venture on the ashes of the Second World War. The copper mine he envisioned was ransacking the First Nations' ancestral territories, drawing the wrath of the local people. It definitely took nerves of steel to stay the course, despite all this hostility. Before long, in the face of William Hamilton's cold and uncompromising stance, the petitions and peaceful protests turned into sabotage, vandalism, and other criminal acts. The industrialists' private properties also encountered the wrath of the demonstrations. Carl Faubert, a veteran of the Korean War, was hired from Montreal as a private detective to shed some light on this whole thing. But at the end of his long journey to northern Quebec, the detective did not only encounter property damage, he also came face to face with the corpse of William Hamilton. The strangeness only kept building throughout the investigation. A powerful, unseasonable blizzard hit the region. Bodies frozen in unbreakable ice appeared. The local fauna began to act strangely and aggressively. Carl Faubert began to doubt his own sanity. The detective felt the weight of a gaze, as if he were at the mercy of a powerful, feral creature waiting for the right moment to attack. Carl's fear was taking over, overpowering his reason. He was giving in to delirium. In that instant, he thought that the dark waters of the lake might shield him from the shapes that pursued him. From there, he had a renewed hope in civilization, or whatever was left of it. Carl knew that on one of these shores stood William Hamilton's lavish mansion, and there the detective had hopes of finding a way out of the area. A phone, a truck, who knows? Under the luxurious paneling and damask carpets, he might be able to find answers to his questions. The detective wondered about the floating debris. Had it drifted out from the shore, or had it been abandoned there in the middle of nowhere? Carl saw a boat in the distance, clearly piloted by one of his own. Had he finally made it to civilization? His hopes were immediately drowned out by the sound of gunshots. Time to flee again, and fast. Carl swam without a thought, yet each stroke was desperate. The icy water and his wounds made him feel weaker and weaker. He had to get to shore. and the hypothermia were tearing at Carl's poor body. When he finally saw a light in the distance, he was filled with a faint sense of hope. Could it be a refuge? Carl struggled to wake up. His makeshift bandages offered him little time. If he wanted to find the truth, he had to get to Hamilton Manor without delay. The starting point of his investigation was to take inventory of his working tools. The starting point of his investigation was to take inventory of his working tools. Carl left his refuge, knowing that he was headed to a more comfortable, but otherwise ominous place, Hamilton's mansion. He knew that wolves do not attack people. Still, he had to be careful. Wolves do not generally attack human beings. At least, not unless you attack them first. Bears are shy creatures, until one day, for no apparent reason, they react aggressively to feeling threatened. That day is often your last. They say that wolves don't attack humans. Still, Faubert thanked his lucky stars that he was not the man who would prove this theory wrong. The ice looked recent. Better not test it. Carl tried to put the horror into perspective. Accidents happen, and in the inhospitable far north, it happens more often than not. Nevertheless, a feeling of déjà vu stayed with him, as if the carnage was not over. An access card, a rather modern piece of technology, especially for a mining complex in the far north. What could it possibly open? The plan suggested that a package had to be retrieved not far away. Carl had to keep his eyes open. What were these mysterious fragments? And why was there a warning about the Brume? This letter raised more questions than it answered for the detective. This was the mansion of the late William Hamilton. No doubt about it. There was no other rich industrialist in the area to have a sumptuous mansion built in the middle of nowhere.
Si vous entendez ceci, ce message est crucial. Trouvez un endroit où vous mettre à l'abri. Ne sortez qu'en dernier recours. Si vous avez à sortir, armez-vous et méfiez-vous de quiconque porte les couleurs de la Hamilton Mining Corporation. Tenez-vous le plus loin possible de la faune. Les animaux sont devenus extrêmement agressifs. Je répète, tenez-vous le plus loin possible des animaux et méfiez-vous de quiconque porte les couleurs de la HMC.
This letter, found in the cabin, mentioned a gazebo. The key to the mansion would likely be there. Added to the mayhem was violence. Carl understood that a tragedy had occurred here. Carl was overcome with a strange emotion. The crossword puzzle was in French, so he guessed it was the work of a Hamilton employee and not Hamilton himself. Carl was overcome with a strange emotion. The crossword puzzle was in French, so he guessed it was the work of a Hamilton employee and not Hamilton himself. Carl could feel his muscles weakening, his breath wheezing, his body going numb. What was happening to him? The floor was rocking. The walls seemed to be running from Carl's hands as he tried to steady himself. Something was not right. Carl's thoughts were twisting in his head, making him dizzy. move forward. His feet could hardly find their way in front of him. He doesn't know which way he came from or the way he's going. Everything seems to be going in a circle. Carl suddenly feels like he's waking up, but inside of a dream. The cold hits him suddenly, like a bucket of freezing water. Had he completely lost it? Or was he supposed to accept the manor's strange architecture, suddenly leading him to the middle of nowhere? These imposing structures seem to come from the depths of time, or from the moon landing, or even from his own mind, clouded after an afternoon nap. The detective had no idea how it worked, but the stones seemed to slide on the rails smoothly as soon as the totem pole was rotated.